fellow New Yorkers, has been a privilege. The opportunity to be able to travel from the most urban areas to the most suburban areas and now into the rural areas. We are scheduled to go to Binghamton this weekend and Syracuse. Last weekend, we were in Newburgh and Albany. Next weekend, we're going to be flying out to Buffalo. And our travels will continue for the month of March throughout as many counties as we can get to before the primary. The primary is June 28th. It is important as we continue to hear from New Yorkers. We are on weekly calls with designated areas throughout the state. Again, my name is Diana Reyna. For those of you who have joined, I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. The elections are for the primary, June 28th. I served in the city council and was a deputy borough president in Brooklyn. I am championing what is the issue of crime, public safety. It is a common theme that is rampant across the state. There's fear. People feel terrorized. There's this sense of insecurity, the issue of affordability for our state, to be able to retire and live well, to be able to age in place. We have families that are land rich, but income poor. The issue of broadband in the rural communities, when we talk about disconnected kids during COVID, it hit home in a very different and special way. We're talking about downstate, we are fighting for 5G. Those are first world problems. When you go upstate in the deep rural areas, they don't even have broadband. And so you can't use your GPS, let alone have internet service, unless you can afford a $20,000, $30,000 bill to have your own broadband brought into your home. These are massive infrastructure needs that we have to start focusing in the state of New York. I know that we don't appreciate what is, while our courts don't have childcare services because they haven't been, the funds have not been restored. When families go into court because of family disputes or there's family divorce or domestic violence in the home, the kids are brought into the court and cared for. In this instance, that's still not the case post-COVID because funding has not been restored. In the meantime, we see what is the governor's allocation of almost $1 billion to the Buffalo Bills Stadium, where funds like that could have been redirected to assist with what is child care restoration of funds in the family courts. And lastly, our education system, right? We have poor performing districts and schools. I dealt with this a lot when I was a council member. We had districts that had, in Brooklyn specifically, so you get this micro local level understanding when you're a council member, then you grow into what would be a county-wide perspective, and now you have something to compare with. I represented what would be the poor performing districts. 3 of the concentrated 5 are all in North Brooklyn. That means that our borough is divided into the haves and have-nots. The South Brooklyn area had what would be the richest performing, not rich as in income, but rich as in rich education, enriched with resources and quality. And that led to what would be a inspection of what we expected out of this education system at these specific, tailored, localized school districts that were identified as the problem districts. And we don't have to label them as problem. We just have to pour them with resources, intervention and prevention programs, the opportunities to think beyond what is the end of their nose, right? Planning, vision planning with the principals. We started an initiative that dedicated what would be green classroom learning in these 5 specific districts so that they could start with a classroom and then grew throughout the rest of the district, but prioritizing really geo-targeting schools that were behind on STEM activities, STEM curriculum, really allowed them to elevate their performance. We still have a long way to go, but this is the start of what is the discussions on urban agriculture, learning science in a different way. We have an opportunity here to really understand the New York State Lottery that was created in 1965 and where that money is going. We have to start accounting for that. There is a lack of accountability. We have to address what would be an audit of this funding, of this fund, so that we can account for every dollar and whether or not it's reaching the student classroom. So with that, I want to open up for questions. I give it back to your president, Maritza.
All right. Thank you, Diana. It's a pleasure. I also want to thank you for attending a women's networking mixer and supporting the LGBT community, the Big Brothers and Sisters and YWCA, all the guest speakers that were there. Thank you so much for coming. It was nice seeing you and meeting you there. We do have a couple of questions. I know I do. But before, for all those all my friends out there that just attended, I'm just going to go over this again. I'm so proud to say this. Diana Reyna, all right, graduated from Pace University. So Westchester County, she's part of our family. She was city council member from 2002 to 2013, in which she concentrated in her efforts in funding for youth programs, which she just spoke about. She also served as deputy borough president for Brooklyn. And ready? She's the first Dominican American woman ever elected to statewide office. I hope everyone has their drink on. We got a toast for that, okay? Now, I do have some questions before I start. Ladies and gentlemen, please write your questions in the chat room. If we don't get to your question, we will post your question and answer in our Facebook page, or we can email it to you, or our information, our telephone number is in the chat room. Copy it. Also read the rest of the information in the chat room. We have Team Maria, Reyna's team captain, who is throwing a big event on May the 22nd. So you can bring your kids, your grandparents, and meet this wonderful lady in person. It's going to be outdoors, a lot of great food, a lot of fun. All right, Reyna, we want to know a little bit about you. All right, first, but let's talk about politics a little bit more. Let's start talking about politics. What sets you apart from the rest of the candidates?
That's an excellent question, Maritza. It's the experience. It's the leadership. It's the ability to govern. You can't be an activist and apply that into government. Being an activist on the outside of government is a very different role than coming into government and having to negotiate and having the ability to collaborate, being able to understand how to be strategic, being able to leverage resources. These are all skills that are important to New Yorkers, right? For the ability to be able to steer us in the right direction. When you start referring to governing as a leftist issue or right issue, then you lose perspective and it becomes a political issue as opposed to a centered conversation. And so it is important that we respond to what is impacting New Yorkers, to be able to listen to those issues, take note, and hold accountable your agencies and your agency leaders.
Thank you, Diana.
I've done all of that.
Thank you. All right. Next question. If you become New York State Lieutenant Governor, what's the first thing you will change? You would like to make a change?
Of course. So one of the first things is that audit I spoke about for the lottery system. It is very important we understand where those dollars are being allocated. It'll be interesting to understand whether or not the 100% has gone into what would be the classroom, schools, school districts, school aid. We have my comment about land rich and income poor, property taxes that families cannot afford. In New York, we can't continue to expect what is a lack of school aid from the state government, supporting these smaller counties that don't have the population, but their property taxes are enormous and growing every year. Though these families perhaps never had children, or their children have already moved on, their grandparents. We have to think of a better way to be able to aid families so that they do not go into foreclosure for a lack of payment on their property taxes, and be able to address what is the state aid contribution. So I think that that prioritizes what would be one of the first things we have in hand, and obviously public safety, right? We have a 15-point plan that Tom and I are supporting. It includes what is a very specific commission to work with our neighboring governors, to bring them to the table, their lieutenant governors, to bring them to the table, to bring in law enforcement, to bring in prosecutors, to bring in our local mayors, but have a real discussion on this illegal gun highway that's a black market that is bringing what would be unaccounted for firearm. This will allow us to engage in a deeper conversation, a collaboration, and perhaps set a model as to how we can join forces to triage this issue.
Thank you, Diana. Now, before I go on to my next question, I do have to give some shout outs. I'm going to give a shout out to Maylene, Toro, Julia, who are the Maylene, president of the 100 Hispanic Women of Westchester organization, and also Julia, who's the vice president and board member. Thank you for coming and attending the Zoom meeting. Also, for Maria Mercado, who is the president, and I think you know Diana, you used to work with her, of LACLA. Thank you. Maria wave so they'll know who I'm talking about. And I'll continue giving shout outs through the Zoom meeting. My next question. I'm sure many of you have heard about the marches and what's going on Tuesday in reference to Roe versus Wade. Where do you stand with Roe versus Wade?
I support and have always supported the right to choose, the reproductive rights that women have. This is going to be I had friends that were calling that were saying they were crying. This is a time when women have to support one another. This is a time where we're going to be tested. And so we have to band together to be able to address this issue in unity and with reason. We're going to see extremists trying to divide us. And we have to be able to come together as women to be able to set the agenda loud and clear.
Thank you, Diana. Let's go some more shout outs to some wonderful youngest teachers. They're here learning all about Diana. We got Mr. Boyd, if he's on. We got Ms. Donato, and we got Mr. Edwin. Also, we have Allison. Allison has a hi from Hope Wines, and she's also a member of our club. All right, Maylene, the president of 100 Hispanic Women of Westchester, has a question for you. What made you choose to run with Tom Zwazi?
Very good. I get this question 10 times a day. Tom and I know each other when I was first starting out. He was already a county executive, and there was a relationship that he had already established with my former employer who was an assemblyman at the state level, representing my community, my hometown community. And so I've known him when I was a chief of staff and then as a council member. And in the transition, there was a growing relationship throughout the years being in elected office, coming together with different legislators. So the opportunity for him to reach out started in November. And I had left politics, elected office 4 years ago. My dad had died 5 years ago. And it was a very rough time. I had to put things in order for my family, for my mom. She is 85 years old. And this is the first time she's never lived with what would be her spouse or of, her significant other that she was married to for 46 years. And that was a challenging time. So I was able to find my bearings. Things were better with my mom at home. And I missed people. The opportunity to be able to serve with honor and dignity. And I saw a deterioration of our state, our city. The politics are getting uglier. And it's hard for me to stand on the sidelines. I built a small business consulting firm from the ground up for the last 4 years. I could have stayed, just being able to have a peaceful life. But I know and have seen on this side the lack of response from government offices that I would never, ever accept. And so that drove me with fervor to just want and need to do this, because I could not bear with my arms crossed, waiting for someone else. And if not me, then who? At the time, I was also in conversations with many people, always complaining what happened to our Latinos, right? As far as statewide office is concerned, are we ever going to get this opportunity? And this was the opportunity to be able to accept an invitation from Tom and my interest in being able to return into politics, into elected office where I have impact.
Thank you, Diana. Some more shout outs. Jessica, Christina, Juana, teacher at Yonkers Public Schools, Ada Medina, Yonkers City Judge. Thank you for attending. Kiki has a question. We're going to go back to Roe versus Wade. And Kiki has a question. So I'm going to let her ask instead of me reading the question. Go ahead, Kiki.
No, actually, it was just, I wanted to know your feelings on Roe versus Wade, but you spoke about it. So I don't feel you have to reiterate that again. That's good. We want your support. We want your support. Right. I was going to say that, as women, we are this country's biggest threat. So anything to try to tear us down is what's going to be used against us. So there's strength in numbers, and we just want to know that you're on our side.
Right. That's right. Kiki, I hope your leg is better.
Great. My leg, baby, my brain. I have brain. It was my brain.
Oh my God.
Thank you. Kiki is my partner in crime, my vice president of the social club. All right. And a good colleague and a very, very good friend. We have 10 minutes. So ladies, if you do have any questions, please write them down and we will place the answers in our Facebook page. I have another question for you, Diana.
Yes.
Governor Andrew Cuomo signed into law in 2011 the same-sex marriage.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the same-sex marriage? What are your thoughts?
Well, prior to having that law into place, it was the advocacy of what would be the first openly gay speaker that was in the city council that drove that campaign up to Albany. I was proud to support Christine Quinn as our speaker back in 2006. And the opportunities to be able to work with her side by side on such a passionate issue. This was a human rights issue. We embraced what would be our fellow colleagues from the LGBTQ community. and the opportunity to be able to be part of history that would change and protect the lives of partners. It was, quite moving. And the opportunity to see Albany then shift in the same direction under Cuomo was the day that, Christine Quinn, cried on the floor, right? And we cried with her. It was a victory that was long fought, and she prevailed along with all of us supporting her. So we supported not just the LGBTQ community, but the first woman speaker in the council. That was a significant day.
Thank you. It was a very significant day. Thank you so much. Shout out to Erin, Supreme Court Justice candidate, Daniel, Rich, Allison. I said Allison, Sandra Torres, one of our members, Wendy, one of our members, Melanie Underwood, author and famous chef in New York City, but lives here in Westchester. Thank you. And Karen Beltran, thank you. All right. We have a few minutes. Why should we vote for you, Diana?
Oh, girl power. That's the first and probably the only answer, right? There is another woman running in this race. But as I said, I come with proven leadership, proven skills, the ability to work with everyone. I am not, coming from a point of view of an activist. I'm coming from a point of view of governing, functioning, accountability, collaboration, being able to see impact, growth. I chaired the Small Business Committee when I was in the council. I was the rules chair before that. And then before that, I was the chair of the subcommittee on public housing. And so my background ranges. I was a member of the Finance Committee, a member of the Land Use Committee. I understand, the intricacies of how all of this is interwoven, and being able to see the forest through the trees is a key element, right? Because there's always a strategic planning mode that you have to have always on to see opportunity where no one else will.
Thank you, Diana. Quick shout out. Debbie, Kiki, of course, my partner in crime, Brian, Jessica, Christine, Juana, Ada, Maria. We have Minerva that's online. We have Mary, Maria, Melanie, Wendy, Sandra, Allison, Rich. And we were going to have Jackie Lynch today. I'm not sure if she's online. She's a 17-year-old who's organized the march in Mamaroneck for Don't Stay Gay. But I guess she's not on today. Also, Margie, we have enough time for 2 more questions. Ready? What motivates you to work so hard? Because I know you've been, after this, you were in a Zoom meeting. I mean, I think everyone here, these women, Diana, are unbelievable women with their organizations and their business, and they work. They're all unbelievable hard workers. And we want to know what motivates you. Tell us what motivates you to work so hard.
Good energy around me is always a must. And being on this call, right? Feeding off of what you're doing here today and how you do it consistently, right? I have a passion for people, a passion for doing good. And if I can leave this world a better place than I found it, then that to me is the greatest reward. Not everyone may step up to the challenge of doing that. This work is brutal. It's not glamorous. People see the glamour, but they don't see the work behind the scenes. Your life is public. I protect my children, my husband, who's a lieutenant on the NYPD, 25 years. It's not easy. Yeah. Shout out to my husband, because good partner is a key element to my success. When I'm out of the house, he's in charge of the household. Everything from laundry to cooking to planning the meals. And this is, an opportunity for him to support my career just as much as I've been supporting his. There is a motivating factor when I see my mom, when I see her struggles. I have nothing compared to her. She was a child of one of 8 kids. My grandmother became a widow when she was 12 years old, and she was the second oldest. And so she had to care for all her siblings. They had to live off of the land that they lived and work every day from, sunrise to sunset. My dad was one of 12 kids. So we come from a very large family. Easily you can, have 150 from each side in a matter of hours. But this is what family is. And growing up, it wasn't easy. We were poor, but we were happy. And I have seen what is the struggles that they have gone through. And I understand what it is to be displaced out of your home, because we experienced it. Not to have hot water, not to have gas, because I've experienced it. To have your mom go to housing court and you have to translate for them at the age of 8, 9, 10. I've experienced it. To be able to be tracked in education system that just automatically places you in bilingual education, and you're not learning English nor Spanish, even though you're a native born and bred child in this country. But because you have a Latino name, that becomes the trigger to be able to place you. These microaggressions in the system is where the system then becomes segregated. It's how we continue to have failure and underperformance. And that has to be called out. That has to be dealt with. I'll never forget, and this is my last bit of personal story.
Okay.
I had gone to support the Democratic Party on a presidential campaign. I won't bore you with the details of who it was, but I took my staff. I paid for their flight, and we stayed with volunteers of the party who opened their home. They were very gracious. We would work from morning to night in Miami-Dade, and then we would go to stay with the family. And the family was very eager to get to know us, who we were. And they were delighted that we took an hour of our heavy day. We were tired, but we had shared what would be this hour of conversation with them. And the couple was elderly, white, and they were not used to what is a team of Latinos. So when they heard us speaking and we were engaging, and they asked about how I got started in politics so young. I was 26 when I was elected to office. So the gentleman ends the night with, "Oh, you're not so primitive." And to me, that was I've